Don't look that bright right here. Oh, maybe that's better. Hello everybody, this is Philip from the Hub with your evening update. I'm here with John.
Good evening.
And we are still waiting on Brother Ikaika, but we thought we'd get started already since there's lots to talk about. So, yeah, just hi you guys. Maybe we'll wait for a couple more people to join in before we keep going with our regular evening update. Hi everybody. So I'm here with John.
Evening.
We're waiting on Ikaika still, but we're not going to wait to start. We're just going to get going. So maybe we should start with our typical map update. Maybe we'll do this a couple of times, but we'll start with the latest USGS map, which is actually, let's see, I have it in the iPad. We actually have it in person from the meeting tonight, right here.
Film this one usually shows up good on camera.
Yeah, I don't think the online version doesn't show the same as our with the roads as this one does it?
Not yet, but
no,
yeah,
so
that's one of the main things is now they're printing the covered roads in dashed lines, which will be very useful for anyone at the Hub coming in trying to figure out where the old roads were. So, well, I'll just describe while you do the filming. So one thing that's developed is Fissure 22 has been active with some pretty high spattering and a small lava flow that comes from right at the vents, which is a narrow cone which is basically right between the twos and flows right along this edge of the Fissure 20 flows there. So that small red area is where most of the lava flow has come out. So very short, small flow. And the only other developments since the previous map are out at Kapoho. The lava is still expanding around the edges. So two areas, one's very small little breakout right on the road, the Highway 137 road broke out, hasn't made it too far yet, and there's been lava for several days coming out of the north side of the flow, and I haven't put it in too distinctly on my map yet, but we got some really serious aerial photos in this evening that show that the flow has expanded quite a lot since this afternoon up here on the north by the loop and by the coast. So these flows seem from the aerial photos to be expanding pretty quickly and have consumed several of the structures, the houses that are still down there. So just off this north side is moving more rapidly since this afternoon.
Yeah, that's the bad news for the day, is that we've had somewhere upwards of 5 or 7 houses already burned down since yesterday on that north edge of the lava flow where it's still going for Kapoho beach lots. So we'll show you guys some pictures pretty soon, but since we got more people joining, I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Here at the Community Hub with John, and we're gonna give you guys an evening update of the eruption, what's happening as far as we know tonight. So yeah, someone says there's a breakout by Green Lake. Yeah, that's very true. We can talk about that next maybe. Yep. And then we can kind of cycle back. So let me switch the camera here and let's see if we can get this thing to load without very much glare. So put that one, and there it is. All right, maybe you can hear me. I can prop it up. Okay. It's gonna go under. Does it work?
I think so.
Uh-oh, we hear the generator going out. We might lose our lights here in a second, but this thing is backlit anyways, so maybe that'll work.
That'll work.
All right, so this thermal map is from yesterday. For us, it's still July 3rd over here in Hawaii. Yesterday, 6 a.m. And so looking at Fissure 8, the eruption site right here, that's still flowing pretty good, and everything looks fairly the same from that upper part of the channel right here. The first thing we notice going down the channel is all these bright spots on the edge of the channel right in here, and in the south part in here. Those are all overflows of the channel. So the channel is definitely quite full and spilling over the edges, right? Especially right through here in this upper section, you can see that really clearly. None of these are actually big enough to have gone off of the new lava. They're all on top of the recent lava still, right? So not posing any threat to anyone nearby. Oh, there go our lights. And looking down here, farther down the channel, let's see, there's a little overflow, right? And there, my finger's kind of big for this, but there it is. Right in there. Well, here, let's zoom it in, huh? That'll make it easier.
There we go.
So there we go. There's overflow right in there in that part of the channel. And then down here, we see some more too. This is not showing as good in my camera in the dark, but right in there, those are overflows on the edges too. And let's see. Not a whole lot going on through there until we come down to this section right in here, right? And so here the channel is quite wide, and this is an interesting part of the channel. We're looking at some of the past imagery, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. But right here it's spilling over, and then a big spillover happening right around here. It's hard to really tell where Green Mountain is and Green Lake, but
it's right in here. So the dark field
this is the flow
here,
that was
that's
Green
where
Lake,
it went into Green Lake. That's where the lake was right there. But
so it's
you can
the dark
see,
horseshoe that goes around it.
The dark horseshoe is what's left of the Green Mountain.
Yeah, okay.
And the breakout, you can see right there, that white mark, that's hot lava on this image. And so that's what we've been talking about as a seep. So you can see the hot lava is way outside of the main channel, and it's somehow come under the crust. And so we've been studying that. But that area from here to here is where there's been a very large overflow since this afternoon, is right in that area right near the end of Green Mountain, which you can kind of see on the thermal image.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, well, that's an area of interest, and so this is where the overflow is happening. We have aerial photographs that were taken by Scott Wilson that he sent, showing us the size of that overflow, so we'll kind of get to that. And looking farther down, let me kind of zoom out a little bit so we can see a little bit more of the image right here. But here's our main channel coming down, and right through here, it's really spreading out, and this is where it's been doing a pancaking effect, right? And so what's happening is it's actually going underneath that main crust and kind of pushing this whole north edge forward right here. And there is a main ocean, so the channel it's still open all the way to here. It's crusted over down in this lower part right through here. There's an interesting hint of a split right here, right? And in fact, there's a hint of a split up here as well that we'll talk about. And the main entry is actually down over here. So this is the biggest river of lava that's going in the ocean, is right over here. Hey, thank you.
Right through there.
Yeah. So there's other hot spots like here, and reports is up through here as well. So it's actually there's a wide area where lava is going in the ocean, but it's really pumping in like this location especially, and down here to some degree as well.
Yeah, let's bring that over so they can see.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so should we go to the animations, or?
Yeah, maybe that'd be good. Looks like we're probably going to get lights again in a minute.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, we might have our generator on in again in a minute. He went to go and get it loaded.
All right. Well, we'll keep doing the
animation on
the computer one, yeah.
The thermal image, because.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Plenty of information coming from that image right now.
All right. So. This is that animation image. I've updated it a little bit, but what we want to do is just kind of fast forward it here to our area of interest, and what should we look at first? Ocean entry?
Maybe that seep.
The area of the seep? Okay. So that would be right in here. And okay, so let's recap with the very last slide right there.
Right.
Gotta keep my finger in here so you gotta point.
Okay, yeah, so right here is that seep that we noticed. So lava outside of the main channel, and that's where by this afternoon it's breaking out on both sides of the channel in the same spot. So it's hard to determine how one thing leads to another, but this seep showed up on yesterday's thermal image scan, and this afternoon that same area has lava pouring out on both sides of the channel just here. And so pretty large spillover that we'll show a photo of later. It's hard to say if that'll effectively change the direction of the flow, because that seep happens to be right next to Green Mountain, which is hard to see in the thermal image because it's black. But so it's right up against the mountain. It doesn't have anywhere to flow from that area other than the same direction as the main flow. So even with the big breakout happening up here, it might end up finding the same sort of course through the main channel from that location. But we'll kind of have to see what it looks like by tomorrow.
All right, we got lights again.
Lights, that's awesome.
All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna rewind so you guys can see what this part of the channel used to look like before. Is it working? Oh, hold on, let's see what's going on here. Okay, hold on, technical issues. Let's zoom in over here and fast forward. Okay, so now down here. All right. Okay, sorry guys, here we go. There's our seep. Let's rewind. And right through here you can see the channel actually looks quite a bit thicker.
It was much wider when it formed. See, the white part is the hot open lava part. So as it initially formed, the flow was really spread out as it made the corner around Green Mountain there. You can see really well.
Yeah,
so really wide channel compared to the edge of Green Mountain, which is in black right there.
Right, so what seems to be happening is, you know, one possibility is that that channel is really still that same size, and between that image and this one over here, it's been adding to the sides, right? So that the banks are could possibly be floating over that river a little bit, right? So when it looks like it's gotten really narrow, it's carving down a little bit probably. But it also means that by this point, at the end of the video right here, that this little piece of land right in between there is actually floating on lava, right, kind of unconnected to the sides. So we're spending more time on this than usual, maybe just because we know that people have been at some places going out to the edge of this channel, and you know, maybe feeling safe, you know, kind of close to the channel edge, and especially in this lower section where it's really had a chance to crust over and narrow and maybe it can seep out the edges, that doesn't seem to be that great an idea, right? So this is kind of below, right over here is Cinder Pit.
Yep. So
from that area down looks to be extra dangerous as far as the banks of the channel, right? If we look kind of going back and we do my rewinding again, you guys can kind of see, looking up in an area over here, that this area doesn't seem to really change size very much. Well, so there it is, it's kind of wide, still wide, it does narrow a bit.
Wide.
Yeah, actually from there down it does change quite a bit, yeah. So let me go a little bit more to the side and you can see what I'm talking about over here. Alright, so like if you look at the section over here that has has these islands in it, right? That section isn't really getting any narrower or wider.
Yeah.
As I go forward and backwards, right? But everything just down to there goes from very wide to very skinny.
Very, very narrow through here now.
Yeah, it's back, and here going forward in time again. You guys can see how skinny that's getting, yeah. Hard to believe this has just been a month of change, but that's what's happened in the last month. So yeah, that's just our warning about the channels and how things are flowing right there. So since we're talking about the seeping, let's maybe look at the Kapoho area a little more closely on this north flow right here. So one thing we're going to kind of point out, let's rewind back to when this flow first came through here. Maybe that's a good one right there, huh? Where you can see that this channel has got two clear branches, right? There's a branch, the northern branch up there is the one that goes right into Kapoho Bay, or went to Kapoho Bay. Right, and that southern one is the one that go into vacation land right there, right? So one possibility is that those two branches of flow still exist underneath all that crust. So in that case, there's really a whole network of pathways underneath all that rubble, you know, of this pancaking or ballooning, like someone suggested, right, of this flow as it spreads out. So when we kind of fast forward, you know, it looks like the main channel that's open stays more to the south, But there might still be a hint of, can you point out that northern channel right up there? Yeah, right there.
Right
that
through there.
That hint of that channel might still be under there, right? And you see that kind of hot edge of it. So there could actually be lava pushing into the middle of it and kind of just squeezing out on the edge. That's kind of that same seeping effect that we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
So we have some scans that don't actually cover that area right through here. But by now, you can see that the flow is actually able to go that way, right?
It's retreating, but we see the hot lava showing up in the cracks in that same position.
Right.
Later in the sequence.
Yeah, and you talked about the slabs. Yeah, I'm going to point out some of these slabs.
So you can see, you know, the first flows went out to Kapoho Bay in that northern area that we were showing, which was right through here. And initially, they weren't put in. Yes, you can see when it first was deposited and formed that part of the delta of it. It was pretty uniform, big, wide, crusted over lava channel and lava delta there. So you can see it's pretty uniform. And we go forward, real uniform there, like one big slab, and it's out of our scan a few days there. But then by the time the flow works its way down to the south and then back up to the north again, we see that slab is starting to get these fractures. Those white lines are cracks where there's hot lava heat signatures showing between them. So you can see there's a whole set of fractures that have started to divide up that nice big slab until by the end of our sequence, it's really, really fractured. You can still see the nice big flat pieces of crust, but they've clearly been shifted around and pushed around a little bit because there's lava squeezing underneath them in places. And that sort of looks like, it's hard to tell, but from somewhere in here at that major branch, the lava might still be finding part of the old channel, being the original path it took through the bay, somehow under the crust to get to this major ocean entry, which is active right now. So it's kind of interesting, but we can definitely see the breaking up and the pushing around of those large slabs of crust. And it takes an incredible amount of power to do that, move that much earth, and just think this small amount of lava underneath that crust is heaving it around and pushing its way out to the coast to the north there.
So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what we think is going on with that flow that's really moving through the beach lots and, you know, consuming a lot of the houses that are left over there, unfortunately. And
to reiterate, though, I mean, there's not a lot we can do about it consuming more houses, and we've got to watch to see what it looks like. But these seeps that were mentioned over at this area where there's a large breakout happening, that, again, like Phil said, that's a major warning to anyone who thinks they can walk up close to the open channel of the lava flow. There may be undercut areas where the lava is actually flowing under a significant amount of crust, or areas where it's seeping where you can't notice it. So it's very, very dangerous to approach that channel, is the bottom line.
Yeah, and we'll show you guys the pictures, which is coming up shortly. Then you'll see that the size of this thing, how big it actually is now, and for people who are asking where it might actually go, it seems like it's still being controlled by the edge of Green Mountain right there. So let me take a couple questions that are on here today. So Les mentions this is a good example of how the pre-existing topography can still control how the flows go after it covers. So so we're kind of talking about that exactly, how those initial branches of the big river are maybe responsible for this movement, you know, like because for it to seep up here, it's basically got to be flowing underneath that first original channel right through here, right?
Yep.
And so the channel did swing down, or maybe the main bulk of the flow went down, but whatever happened, this north branch didn't seem to die off, and it's been maybe reestablished or reoccupied, or more flow is going that way. It's hard to say which one of those things, but for sure it's still there after it was originally in that place in the first place.
My thinking, and Philip and I discussed that a little bit, is that I would think it has the most to do with what is still hot underneath this massive area of crust. So if there's areas in the original channel that are still molten or still very hot, it would be easier for lava to re-intrude underneath all of that heap of rubble and crust. So I think it has as much to do with cooling as it has to do with the original course. So they go kind of hand in hand, is just my thinking on
So
it.
the original course is going to be where the lava piles up the deepest, and therefore stays
the
mushiest
hottest.
the
Yep.
longest, and therefore that's how it kind of all relates.
Yeah.
So that's more of the nuts and bolts of why it's being so devastating on the north side today. But the benefit of that is the south part of the flow seems to be mostly dying off. There's a little bit of heat over here, and here's that little finger that John was mentioning is starting to go on the road a little bit. So we'll see how that develops.
Yeah, and that hopefully doesn't keep going. But one thing we do know about these flows is they show a strong affinity for paved roads, and there could be a number of reasons for that. One suggestion that's been made is the melting and the burning of the asphalt underneath the flow helps it stay hot and kind of lubricates its course, so it likes to follow roads. If there's any sort of slope, it'll stay on the road. And so if we're talking about the flow imprinting on the small topography, maybe that roadway is going to imprint a flow that's going to head straight that way. Hopefully not, though, because that road leads right back to the warm ponds, which we're happy to hear we're no longer being encroached upon. But
yeah, so for now the hot ponds are still in the clear.
Still in the clear. We've got one finger of lava way far away on the road.
Right, so kind of just to kind of clarify what this map is showing here. The area that's black is where they scanned and didn't see heat. Right, that doesn't actually mean lava. The gray is where the lava actually is. So this is actually a true edge of the flow down by the warm ponds is down here. And what was said at a meeting today is that there's actually an old flow that kind of runs along the edge here.
Yeah.
Right, so that this is kind of a little low spot, and a flow is kind of stuck there for now. So it would have to go that direction again and fill in that spot before being able to move further this way along the coast. And in fact, maybe why it moved along the coast this way is because of that little gap that was there below this branch of the flow, which came earlier, right? From the breakout that went around the west side of Green Mountain, right? So it was kind of a little gap below there that was still not filled in, and then this flow was able to fill it in there. So for now, this boundary has a slight barrier. We know the barrier is probably not that big, and as big as these flows are, it may not mean something in the end. But for now, it's good news as far as a flow that was closest to Kīlauea and the Warm Pond. Which are actually right in there.
Yep, right in there.
To stall that flow at least for now, right? So that's the good side of it is the south side stopped flowing, the bad side is the north side's going, and if you're just joining us, we've heard maybe 7 houses have been taken in the last day or so. So
it could be more than that based on the photos we got from the air, but we'll have to wait and see confirmation on that.
Right.
Ooh, and that's a good point. Now, having met Dane DuPont and having more time to discuss their method at Hawaii Tracker for getting some of those maps, that I do want to give my authentication for Dane DuPont and Hawaii Tracker for putting together one of the best lists maps that can show people which structures, which houses have been consumed. Dane puts a lot of effort into confirming all of that before it goes on his maps, get very accurate counts and observation of which houses have been taken. So anyone who's trying to figure out that information, Hawaii Tracker is a good place to look at that. They're really committed to making sure that list of houses is really accurate from aerial photo data and cross-referencing it with as many photos from the air and things like that that they can get their hands on. So just wanted to give my endorsement of what they're doing with those lists that can help people understand if the property has been taken or not, for sure. The ultimate confirmation that comes from official agencies, but Hawaii Tracker is a good place for people to look for themselves.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, and we have if you're just joining us, we showed this first thing. We showed the map that we got from the meeting today. There's a public meeting at the Pahoa community. Pahoa High School cafeteria for the Pahoa community. And on this map that they provided us, we actually have the old streets that have been covered, marked on here, which is...
And then dotted lines. So there's the Red Road, Highway 137, and Four Corners, where it was taken. Highway 132 back towards Pahoa. And that's a really helpful thing. But again, this type of map, we're really more trying to help people understand where the hazards are out there. And some of the other maps are gonna give people the info they want to know. Is my house still standing? Is a question we can't really answer with this kind of map, but it helps everyone get oriented to what the flow is doing. So.
All right, should we show Scott's pictures?
Yep.
All right, so what I've done here on the iPad is pull up Hawaii Tracker and put up Scott Wilson, which is where he's been posting these, at least the place where I've found them most easily right now. And so there's a view of Fissure 8 still pumping, right? There's 8, and there's the steam of 24 right next to it, right? So things have been steaming a lot, but nothing fresh, right? And for those who are asking, 9 would be kind of over here. We just see a little bit of steam, not nearly as much. But we don't see it.
And there's a view of Mini 8 up at the very end.
At the very end,
Yeah,
like off to the side over here.
Yeah, it's hidden in the fog.
Right. So there it is.
Yeah, right here I call Mini 8. That is a little bay. Some people notice it's more apparent on some photos, especially at night. But that second little bay that's conjoined with the river there, just to the left in this shot, as it comes out of the fog, you'll see it. But that is actually part of the fissure, straight in a line there, and it must be producing lava or it would have cooled. So some
yeah,
people,
for sure, yeah.
In other images, you can see it. So
yeah, and you actually saw it bubbling, you said the other day.
Yeah, that was the last confirmation I needed when we were in the airplane. I could look at Mini 8, and the crust was moving out into the main river, so it was definitely producing volume, but then the crust parted and I saw some spatter come out of there. So even though it's not always visible from above, it is producing lava that's entering the river, the main channel. So I call it Mini 8.
Yeah, so by the way, we did go in the air. Was it?
Right, yeah, we were in the air.
When was that?
Yesterday?
Yes.
No,
day before yesterday. Yeah.
Day before yesterday.
And so, yeah, we were able to talk with Scott about these photos and kind of analyze them, you know, going back. There's a lot that he hasn't posted as far as what else has been going on as changes on the flow field. So it's been a very valuable tool for us. So let's kind of go back to what he has put us today. He gave us a treasure trove today. This is a picture of Fissure 22. So there it is, 22. And there's the flow from it that came out, and we think was setting some fires earlier today. People reported seeing white smoke in this area, so maybe it was something burning over here. We're not quite sure. But that flow, even though it's daytime here, it doesn't look like it's there's no sign of red anywhere along it, right? I just see like it's probably cooling off that flow already. So while the volume coming out of 22 has increased, it's still not that much compared to what Fissure 8 is putting out. It's basically still that kind of nosebleed eruption, yeah? So, okay, there's a Fissure...
Mini 8.
Fissure 8 again, and yeah,
so
Mini 8.
It doesn't look very red in that picture, but the second bay, that's producing lava that's running out into the river. And I actually was able to see it spatter a couple times from the air, which was, yeah, that was the last clue I needed, that is indeed part of the erupting Fissure 8, is that second little bay there.
Yeah, so it's bubbling. It's probably darker color because the crust has formed over it, so it's not moving out of there quite as fast. It's ponding for a little longer.
Yep.
But it's still liquid underneath that skin. It's just a skin on top of it.
Yeah, I could see a lot of action from the air. Some photos give the indication that it's moving, and this photo more looks like it's cooled, but it's still active, definitely.
And then here's that interesting little section where there's like a little lava tube or something. The flow actually goes underneath here. This little piece of land, and it pops out underneath here.
Yep.
So that's been there for a while, that fissure, yeah.
At the top of the fissure, our thermal image is usually all skewed by the plume. It gives a heat signature, so they can't get thermal images of this area here very well. But I think that this, Ikaiko was calling that a seep because it's seeping out of the main channel underneath the crust there, so that's exactly what we mean by a seep. But I wonder if this was actually caused by mini 8s when they were first forming, maybe 2 streams and it crusted over, so it's almost like a little segment of lava tube right there.
Yeah, it could be. I'd be more inclined to call it a lava tube myself, since it's kind of close to the surface, right? And not coming out the side of the bottom somewhere over here, because this thing is now 180 feet tall, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the ground level is actually way down here now.
Oh, right. Good point.
So,
and if it didn't keep flowing, it would crust over, of course. So it's been continuously feeding through there for a very long time in the formation of the channel. So.
All right, so yeah, this is looking kind of north and south. So there's 8, and this one would be 24 over here. That's also been putting out a bunch of steam, but
we could see that glowing from the air.
And
as
yeah,
well.
A little bit of glow, right? But no lava. You know,
lava.
Just to mention, you know, the glow can happen if the rock is extra hot, but not even molten. So just glow by itself is something we watch as a stage towards maybe reactivation of event. But just the glow on its own, the gas on its own, the steam on its own is not enough for us to say, okay, well, that thing is going to come back to life.
Right.
Right. So it's something to watch for. But there have been several fissures glowing. In fact, it's been 22 has been doing it, spattering. 8's been the one going strong. 20. There's been a report of 24 and possibly 9 glowing.
Possibly 9. We
have reports of maybe 16 and 18 glowing as well.
Right.
So we're not sure what's exactly going on with all of these, but so long as none of them actually, you know, so 22 is the only one that's kind of spattering and fissuring up, putting any lava in the air besides 8. Of anything that maybe would be of greatest concern right now. So 22 we're definitely, you know, extra aware of, especially since it covered some new ground in the last maybe 3 days. Yeah. But it's still not flowing anywhere near a volume that we think is going to be dangerous to what's not burned down already. Right. So we can talk about the Y2028 maybe shortly, but let's maybe go through the rest of these pictures, right, and talk about the Kapoho area in particular, which is what we want to talk about. So. Right. Let me get the reverse view of this. Okay, well, maybe this is a good one right here. So here we see the river coming down and coming around Green Lake. Here is a big dog leg, right? And then from here is where it stops being open and is crusted over going down. Here's our main ocean entry, right? And
it's only getting bigger.
Which is only getting bigger, right? So one huge entry point, and then lots of small ones all along the whole edge right here. It's all flowing, and then right through here is where those houses are have burned recently, is right along the edge. So let's see if we can get a better view of that, since that's really the focus here today. Here's another view of it. There's the river of lava coming down, and here's what we're talking about. It's actually flowing underneath here, right? Though you can't really see as easily those big pieces of slab that we saw cracks that are hot in between, but they're in here, in this area right in here. So underneath this is where the flow is coming, and this is what I would think of as a seep, right? It's flowing almost close to the ground, you know, between that lowest level of lava that first came out and an upper level that's still there, kind of in between that middle gooey part, and then squeezing out here and along this whole north edge right through here.
Yeah. And it's worth stating, you know, this is why the photos shared from some of the pilots out there are so useful, because what you can see glowing in this area here and here, that is all fresh lava since the time that USGS put out this map earlier today. So that red area there that's outlined, that's all fresh, and we would only know about that when these photos are shared with us. So. Right.
Yeah, and you can compare them to the ones that were a few hours ago or a day ago, and we can tell you, we can see more or less how fast things have been moving out, right? So that's also been valuable. And here's another angle. So there's the kind of dispersed ocean entry, there's the main ocean entry, and here's all the seeping. The main channel stops right there, crusted over the rest of the way, and flowing underneath all through here. Yeah. So there it is, and let's see if we can, okay, maybe one last view of this area. Here is kind of almost straight down, right? So
this is very current, people, that photo, very, very current.
Yeah, this was taken this evening from the air, right? So thank you so much to Scott Wilson and Hawaii Tracker Group for sharing this with everybody. Yeah, so I don't want to dwell on that. I mean, that's where the houses are burning. I don't even like looking at it, but that's what's going on right now.
Yeah.
So let's move to that upper overflow.
Oh, there it is.
There it is, yeah. Okay, so here is our map again, and right up there, right next to our dog leg, right, is where that big spillover is happening right through there. This is the edge of Green Mountain right here. Let's see if we can get that better view.
Oh, yeah, that's a good view.
There it is, yeah. So here, let me kind of back it out a little bit. Right, you guys see that spot right there? A big spillover puddle right there.
And the seep was happening on the left side in this frame. Is where we noticed the seep on the thermal image. And it's hard to say if the seep is related to this or it's just it's spilling over and breaking out through the seep or something, but that's a big change. And you can see compared to the rest of the channel, that's a lot of lava spilling out, really wide area of flow. But topographically, that might end up having to maintain the same channel, the same direction it's going, because it's kind of bound by Green Mountain there and the cinder pit lobe. Oh wait, no, that's below the cinder pit lobe there. But it's hard to say if that'll end up causing a change in direction of the channel, and I kind of think not, just based on its location, but we'll have to see.
Right, so yeah, between that and, you know, all the overflows that we saw in the thermal image, you know, we're wondering what's going on with that kind of, you might call it a surge, you know, so there's kind of several possibilities. I mean, it could be the output might have increased. That's one possibility.
That's possible.
Right? Another possibility is that it was able to drain faster before now, right? We had a phase where it was able to kind of drain out that channel or most of the lava while it's kind of spreading out in that kind of pancake fashion. And that now kind of built to a certain size, right? And that kind of caused it to maybe back up a little bit. You wouldn't expect it to back up very far if that was the case. So, you know, the upper overflows on the thermal image to me would indicate a fuller channel, which, you know, maybe an increase in the output, at least to some degree, right? But then maybe to some degree at the bottom also this kind of stacking where it might back up and cause more overflows or cause more seeping, right? That's because to form a seep, you have to have enough pressure to lift all that side of the channel and that rock up to the side. So it seems easier to me if the area just downstream of there is pancaked or thicker, right, in some way like that.
So it's involving only a very subtle change in elevation from Green Mountain to the bay, and so that could be backing up the flow in the channel to about that point. But it's really amazing looking at these images to think that higher up in the channel might be filling and draining more than a meter at different times, whether it's surging or if the output is actually changing. But it's pretty amazing because in certain moments the channel has quite a rim, several feet between the rim and the surface of the flowing lava. And then in these images now, it's clearly overflowing the banks. So it's pretty amazing. That amounts to a real significant difference in volume, unless there's some other dynamic that's harder to pinpoint, causing those changes in the banks of the river, lava river. Distracted looking at your pictures while you're flipping through.
Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to read the comments at the same time and queue up what's next, right? We're trying to do our best semi professional job here.
We're pretty professional. He's a doctor.
Yeah, so yeah, I got a comment here from Nina to look at the last picture, and that's what I was just loading up here as the last picture that Scott sent us, looking towards the ocean entry. So there's the channel, right? There's that big
large
spillover
breakout
right there.
Looks like a lake now.
Yeah. And there is the outline of it going down, and here's where it's crusted over. And there's some path from here, we're not sure exactly how, but that gets to there. You know, it might be more this way like this. I guess we're not quite sure. I've been trying to study those old initial flow pathways to try to guess how it might go, but really that whole area, there's so much lava underneath there that it doesn't really exactly matter, but it's getting down there underneath that stuff somehow to there, and then enough to seep out at this other edge over here too. Right?
Yeah. Well, it matters in the sense that we're trying to find patterns that could help us understand this for the next event, you know, like
right.
So those details, we don't always know what to make of the details, but maybe we will if we keep track of them. So
right. Yeah. So. Yeah, so, well, you guys can hear John. So I also updated my app. I don't know if that's what it was, or if we're in a better place, or not during dinner. You know, we told people before that they could come and watch us do our live update, which was, you know, good in theory, but in practice, everyone was talking all around us the whole time. So I apologize for that.
A lot of noise. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I'm glad that that's fixed, whatever it was. So. What should we talk about next? People were asking to hear about the summit. We can talk about that next, or or should we keep?
Good to go to the summit if you are. I'll let you take it away on that because I'm not sure what to mention so far about the change in the pattern, or the potential change in our pattern at the summit.
Okay, well, let's start with here. Let me turn the camera back around. So let's reload and see what our earthquakes map looks like. And it looks like it's looked for most of the last couple weeks. Most all activities up at the summit in Kīlauea by Hawaii Mau presumably. So let's look at something more useful than that. Oh, that's not what I was going for, but here we go. Let's load the deformation page and look from the top down. All right, so if you guys are wondering, this is the HVO website from USGS. I'm looking at the deformation data over here. And the first thing we can talk about is that we've still kept our pattern of kind of collapses at the summit, right? The most recent one happened at maybe 2 in the morning-ish yesterday. And then one before that was maybe 1 in the morning before that. So it was almost a 24-hour, maybe slightly other cycle. If that continues, there should be one overnight and maybe a few hours. So we'll see if that's true. Okay, let's kind of zoom out to the 1 week plot, and this has got something we need to talk about for sure. But here we can see that same pattern of, you know, kind of decreasing, and then there's the jolt, right? Decreasing, the kind of overall big pattern. That hasn't really changed as far as the amount, right? One thing we can notice is when it's going up, it's not spiking as high anymore, right? And also the other thing that's quite obvious is, you know, just the amount of ink. So there is all those earthquakes that kind of precede the event. Right, lots of earthquakes kind of building up to the big one, and then kind of a quiet period, and then lots of earthquakes building up again to the big one, and then a quiet period. And then down in here has been pointed out to us, there is, from that point right there, seems to be a big change in the data, right? So the question is why? And after talking to USGS today at the public meeting, we found out, crucially, that they actually did an adjustment to the instrument this day. They re-leveled the tilt meter, right? So they put it back to baseline, which means that this little bump down here is probably not a real signal of anything volcanic. It's probably a person adjusting the instrument, right? And then there's a big change as how the data is displayed from that point on. So it used to be bumped up higher. Whoop, what happened there?
You touched it.
I touched it. All right. Those iPads are finicky. So from here, before, all the earthquakes are showing as spikes going up. Whereas from this point further on, they now are supposed to be more centered and go up and down both. So that's true in this first little section right in here. It's going up on both sides of the line. And, you know, maybe the thing isn't quite shaking so loose anymore, so much anymore, like every time it gets jolted. So maybe that's why there's not this spike over here either. And then over here in this section, looks like they're mostly going down. So what I would say is they're probably still configuring this instrument or working out the kinks as far as how this stuff should display. And while this possibly could be a change, it's more likely at this point that it was them messing, well, calibrating, let's call it, you know, adjusting.
Calibrating.
Right? Trying to improve the data from the instrument, right? And so unfortunately they've disrupted the data and having to do that. And that may be the main cause of this change in pattern that we're seeing through here, right? Now, we don't know for sure. If something changed in the volcano at the same time they did that, we won't know quite yet. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, my suspicion is that it's all because of that change in configuring the instrument.
And think about how vitally that important that is, what Phil is telling you, that because he's checked with the sources, we have this crucial information that they recalibrated one of their instruments at that time. And so that's why people need to be aware of just taking an idea and running with it when we look at the data that USGS is releasing, because there's a lot of details you need to know in order to interpret it accurately. And so this is a good lesson that, you know, Phil will be able to get to the bottom of this as we observe it some more. But just because the pattern changed on our readout, on our printed graph, doesn't mean the volcano is actually doing something different. We have to kind of be able to compare that over a duration to get that idea right. So it's just super important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the reason we say that is because we ourselves were getting suspicious of what might actually be happening, because there is another plot that we'll show you guys. Here's our month pattern, but that's basically more of the same. Vertical, the thing is still dropping as much as it has. There's no change there. But back to this end of our GPS. So this is a horizontal distance across the Caldera, kind of north to south. And we talked about how we might be seeing a change in a rate down here at the bottom. And that seems to be holding, in fact. Yeah, that change in the rate appears to be real, at least so far. It's still dropping, right? But it's dropping not quite as fast as it was. I mean, it's still really fast if you look at the scale over here. But, you know, let's go over here, look at the scale. Each of those lines is 1/2 meter, which is a huge amount of ground.
Wow.
Right, okay, so it's still dropping really fast. It's just not plummeting, you know, like it was before in the earlier, steeper part right here. And just to mention, this happened before over here. Although now this particular rate looks like it's less than it was before. So we'll have to wait and see. You know, one idea that we've had is, you know, that it might be bounded by the Caldera faults. You know, those main bounding faults maybe have reached the limit of the size that they like to be, and maybe talk about that a little bit. You know, we're discussing earlier about.
So Philip did a really great description of the previous structure of the Caldera, how it collapsed in stages, and we describe it like a telescope a lot of the time. The outer pieces couldn't slide as far, whereas the center of the caldera was more in free fall and fell deeper. So you have all these faults, fractures in the rock leading towards the center. And so judging from some of the data, one of the working ideas we have, or Philip actually devised, is that maybe now that we've reached the kind of boundary faults, as one of the geologists was describing them, it's not simple for faults beyond that to move down. It takes a larger event to get those outer faults to move any further. So now we may actually be seeing that kind of geometric limitation where we've reached the faults that are able to move significantly, and how do we boil that down? That could be a good thing, because that could mean that we're getting towards the end of how much this collapsing can continue through this kind of process. Is that a fair way to sum that up?
Yeah, I mean, you know, so, kind of just to, you know, throw it out, we're basically just brainstorming, you know. We don't have, you know, any actual, we haven't done research beyond a brainstorming to figure out what proof we can find for this exactly. But the idea really is, you know, we're talking about historically, right? So we started talking about the 24 eruption and how it might relate to what we have going on now. And most of us think that it's not at all, right? Despite what we all thought at the beginning.
This is not like 24, yeah.
So then the question comes up, and it was at the meeting on Volcano also on this past Thursday. What about the 1500 collapse, right? The one that followed the Isla outflow that actually covered everything south of Hilo all the way through HPP, right? And that's the one that's essentially the biggest collapse that we know of, the one that happened recently. The 24 is basically just a little dimple on top of that, right? So if our main caldera formed during that eruption in 1500, and that was bigger, probably. It definitely
Most
was not
likely.
definitely was not smaller than what's happening now, given at least the size of the eruption that followed, right? Because eruption of that era, we think, lasted 80 years, right? And it covered everything north of the rift zone in that case. So with that much lava, we that's where we kind of expect the biggest collapse in the caldera to form. So if this eruption, given that this is not a summit eruption, right? The pipe doesn't come straight up from underneath a summit to erupt like it did. That essentially was right near Kīlauea, where that came out of the ground. It's got to come down and go through the rift zone sideways and all of that, right? So you'd think that we're not going to have the full volume that they had, just because it's harder to get here. I would guess that's a guess, because. But that makes some sense, that the flow can't put out as much here as easily as it can on the other spot.
Well, and you're here to give us your educated guess. That's what people want to hear.
Yeah, well, it's our educated guess. Yeah, so basically, in 1500, the crater collapsed. The crater collapse in 1500 should be bigger than the one we're seeing today. Right.
Do you want to show them the boundary faults on that graphic?
Yeah. So here, let's turn us around and.
So it's a lot to keep track of, everybody. But on this graphic, which is just amazing, watching Halemaʻumaʻu subside. As far as the most recent image on this graphic shows, we can see the collapsing extending right out to here, right along there. That's all subsiding along a fault. And you can see it's reached the southern edge of the caldera near Keanakukoi. And you see that southern edge is part of one of the most prominent areas of what we tend to call the main caldera. And so it's kind of those faults that make up the main caldera, which we're kind of suggesting are the boundary faults, that maybe this type of subsidence might not extend beyond the main caldera. Whereas in the year 1500, these faults all the way out here beyond Kīlauea were actively subsiding, and that, we think, was a much larger event. And so maybe we're reaching the limit, just maybe. These inner main caldera faults will end up becoming the boundary for this kind of subsidence.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I would say that if the 1500 eruption was bigger, the caldera then should end up bigger than the one we get now,
Right.
So looking at the shape of the thing we have now, it's fairly circular like this, right? So I'd be surprised if this edge over here collapses in, or this edge over here collapses in. It'd probably stick to this main area in here, right? And I think that, now we do know that these outer faults are moving, out behind the volcano house and the visitor center and on the golf course, and those cracks have been there at least since the last collapse, since 1500 essentially. And I think they all move at the same time, but obviously this one over here is the one that moved the most, right? That's why it's the main caldera today, right? So if that one moved the most then, it would make sense that it's the one that is able to move the most now, right? It's probably not going to move nearly as far because there's not as much lava being pulled out from underneath here, but there's still a huge amount, enough to cause this collapse all centered all through here, right? So if that makes sense. Yeah, so
educated guess here.
Yeah, so we've been trying to kind of piece all this together, right? So it's possible that slowdown and a spreading north to south of the crater may be because we've now reached both edges north to south, right? It could be as simple as that. That's one possibility, right? And it could be that now they're doing more dropping down than they are moving sideways, which is what that particular plot measures. So we'll have to switch to using other stations and make sure, see if the rate of dropping at some point decreases to follow this. Then if it does, then it'll kind of give us some support to what we're thinking, and if it doesn't, then we tried.
And say that thing you're always saying to me. We need multiple lines of evidence to make up our minds about these things. And so ideally you would have one form of data, one sort of instrument recording one thing and suggesting that this is what's happening, and you'd like a completely separate instrument, completely separate line of data to confirm or dispute the exact same thing. You want the data to arrive at the same information, and so this is a good example of how complicated it is. Philip's discussing several lines of evidence, and this might hopefully lead to a consensus on what that evidence is saying. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you know, we have a line of evidence of the GPS looking like the horizontal is slowing down. That's one line of evidence. We thought the tilt meter might have been another line of evidence, but that we have to throw out because we have no confidence that change in the data has got anything to do with any real process apart from them calibrating the instrument, right? So it might have at first seemed to be, you know, reinforcing our case, but now we're taking that off the table entirely.
Yeah. Until we know. Until we can trust that data again, or trust what we make of it again.
Yeah, or at least be able to interpret it more accurately, right?
Yeah,
you know,
interpret it correctly.
Because the way that the data is coming in now is different than before. We know that for sure. We just don't know how different and in which ways, and you know what the data looks like now compared to before. Right. So we'll learn that as more days go by. Right. So that was our second line of evidence. Did we have a third?
Not so much. We're reasoning a lot based on historical evidence, so that could be our third line of evidence, is to learn more details of what has been uncovered about the events in the past. That gives us some sense. So it's understanding the history of how the Kīlauea caldera formed, which is enabling Philip to make these inferences about potentially the boundary faults for this type of subsidence.
So kind of to just keep the possibilities open. We don't really know, Don Swanson at the last meeting mentioned not knowing whether this collapse back then happened over weeks or months or years, right? So that implies that we also don't know if the collapse ending is going to precede the end of the eruption in Puna or follow it, delayed after the fact, so we're not sure. If we see it happening before the eruption is over, we'll say, okay, well, maybe that means something. And if it doesn't happen before the eruption is over, then that's not something we could use, obviously. Right? We'll have to look for other indicators of something changing on a volcano.
I think overall, though, getting back, I'd say it's safe to say this is not like 1924, which was the initial comparison. 1924 gave us the form of the Halemaumau crater that we're familiar with, which was a combination of subsidence and steam explosions in 1924. And we've learned from Don Swanson at USGS that there's no evidence of steam explosions with the explosions we've had so far. It was magmatic gas and then a huge amount of subsidence or subsidence is how I always say it. And so this process that we're witnessing so far is not very much like 1924, and the outcome is a lot bigger than 1924 already. And Philip mentioned last time that Don Swanson has also suggested maybe we will still see the steam explosion part of this later. And that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he didn't actually say that directly like that. He just said the groundwater model suggested it might take at least 2 months for the water to actually mix in. And then I took it to the next step and said, okay, if that's the case, and it's been 2 months now since the beginning, then maybe now-ish is when groundwater might arrive there the soonest.
And that's funny. I initially thought when they were, when USGS began warning everybody that these events at the at Halemaumau were likely to commence, I thought, wow, this seems a bit early, because shouldn't it take a few months for groundwater to intrude? But they seemed very confident in that, and it turned out to be the right thing because they got everybody warned in time to watch the crater begin its exploding and collapsing. So they certainly were right on the money predicting that these big events were on the way. It just came out in a different style than they might have been thinking. But so the groundwater thing from the start, I was like, wow, that seems too quick for groundwater explosions. But yet we've had all this events, and we'll have to wait and see if steam explosions become involved later.
Yeah, and then, hopefully they don't happen anytime soon, but, even if this eruption ends without steam explosions, more likely when the next one begins after some period of quiet at the summit, then the water has had a chance to get in there as those rocks are getting cooler and staying cooler, then the next eruption likely will begin with a bang, right?
But one moment at a time. We don't know that yet. We don't know.
I'm talking, possibly years down the line at this point, right? So, So right now we have no indication of anything like steam explosions happening at the summit or being imminent, anything like that. We're just kind of relaying the possibility it may still be there based on what we heard in the Q&A section of that meeting a few nights ago. All right, so maybe I should look through some questions.
Yeah, questions are great.
All right, so let's see. Why so much gas? Well, the gas comes directly from the magma, if it's not steam. So steam is coming from essentially the groundwater. Whenever it rains, all that water is seeping through all of our porous rock down towards sits in the groundwater. And that layer is the one that's getting close to something hot, some old magma body, whether it's part in the rift zone, enough to form warm ponds, or whether it's up by the summit, enough to form steam vents. That's basically the same process, right? Within the magma itself, all the gas is dissolved inside of that liquid when it's under half mile down, right? We've talked about this before. It's kind of our champagne bottle analogy. So when you essentially uncork it, you cause the crack, the magma comes out, the bubble will start to form, and then the bubbles rise and come to the surface. So when we see more magmatic gas, it means there's a whole lot more magma. That's basically one-to-one the bottom line of it. So interestingly, the amount of magmatic gas coming out of the summit has gone way, way down, right? There was a lot more in the beginning, well, certainly with a lava lake around. But after that, even though there was less than a lava lake, there was still some that was that's what was causing those highest ash explosions, right? According to current thinking. And then essentially, since the magma has been leaving that area, there's less magma and less magmatic gas at the summit, right? And instead, all the magmatic gas that was coming out of the summit, which in the past was in a range of 2,000 to 4,000 tons of SO2 a day, which is huge, right?
It's a lot of gas.
But it's shifted to a whole other level where the estimates now are between 15 and 25,000 tons a day coming out of Puna, right? And that's why...
It's incredible.
That's why yesterday when the wind shifted, it was... literally suffocating to be down in Puna. Right.
It's a really good reminder. We can almost forget about the eruption when the air is good for us in Puna, and that's just atmospheric qualities. Sometimes the majority of the gas is way up in the sky where it's not affecting us directly. Yesterday gave us a taste of just how much gas is really being produced in Lower Puna. So when the wind conditions are unfavorable, this eruption can make it very bad for us nearby. And so it's a good reminder, like when the air is poor, it gets really bad because we have more gas than anybody can really ever remember at this time. So
yeah, it was really intense. Yeah, I mean, couldn't even come down to the hub yesterday because it was closed. That's how bad it was. Yeah. So all right, let's maybe keep going on some questions. News or info on Fissure 9. So we discussed earlier, Fissure 9 is maybe glowing a little bit.
Could be. From the plane, I'm pretty sure I could only confirm Fissure 24 glowing, and Fissure 24 is almost conjoined with Fissure 8. Has some really well-developed spatter cones and rampart right next to the Fissure 8 cone, and definitely some of those small features were glowing when we were in the airplane evening before last. Number 9 is a little bit further away, and at least for myself, I didn't pick out any glowing from the number 9 fissure, but it might just because it was hard to see.
So I'm sorry, so it's not glowing, just to clarify. It was 24 that was glowing. It's steaming still, which basically means there's not much change there. And just to reiterate, we mentioned before, just because the fissure is glowing doesn't mean that there's actually lava coming out of it. You know, it could actually be glowing from the heat of the gases that are escaping from there. So it's certainly it's something that has to happen before fissure reactivates, but that thing has been steaming and glowing the same for a while.
Yeah.
So really nothing has changed there, right? It can start glowing just from the heat of the gases without actually putting out a fissure at any point. Right, so it doesn't mean that there's going to be a fissure or it's going to open up or anything like that. It just means that the lava is still going right underneath there, fairly close to the surface, right, on its way to come out of Fissure 8. Right, that's basically what I think about that. So let's see. what caused the SO2 levels. I think it was just the wind direction. Yeah, the wind direction was all that really changed. Let's see, we have a report from Dane DuPont, who was just in Leilani on a media tour. He says that Fissure heights were lower from Fissure 8, but the volume was still there, just lower fountains. And the explosions from Fissure 22 are large enough that they can be seen from Hawai, actually.
Wow. So
that thing is really, really shooting up in the air. Not a huge amount of lava, but definitely the gas is coming out there a lot more than it was before, right? So
there's a term for what Fissure 22 is doing. It's called strombolian activity, strombolian eruptions. It's named after a volcano in Italy. So it's mostly gas, like a big burst of gas, and it flings small amounts of lava really high into the air. So it's a gas-rich type of eruption, but there's very little lava coming to the surface in each one of those blasts. But it's a really impressive thing to see. That's for sure.
yeah, I think of it kind of like the fireworks, right? It's
fireworks.
Kind of fireworks,
it's like
kind
fireworks,
of eruption.
strombolian fireworks. Right. Yep.
So, all right, let me go back for some more questions here. So let's see. Cracks in the roads. How is rim near Volcano House? I think the whole area, Volcano House, Jagger Museum has all kind of been settling, more so at the Jagger Museum. I don't know about the rim right below Volcano House itself directly. I'm not sure if anyone's gone to look over there, because rocks are probably falling on an hourly basis.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that anyone's going to go and check on that.
Yeah, I mean, the park is closed so as not to endanger visitors, and part of that is also they don't need to endanger their staff to be out there, so they probably aren't checking on many of those things within the caldera very directly, just because it's not safe to be out there.
Yeah, but the ground underneath Volcano House is moving. The ground underneath HVO is moving more because HVO is closer to the Hale Mau center of collapse, right? Let's see. Someone asked about pictures on property, and I see we got Ken Boyer with us too. And I think Ken and Ikaika did a update earlier, which addresses that exactly. So
yeah, they were in Kīlauea this morning.
Yeah, we'll leave it to them to describe that in their own words. If you guys want to look that up, look up Ken and Ikaika's live feed from earlier
today.
Yeah, we won't rehash any of that here. And let me go back a little more. Was there a big earthquake today? The one it was today was at something like 2 in the morning, so there's probably another one coming in a few hours if the pattern holds within a few hours. And let's see, I think I've gotten back on the questions enough. So let me scroll down. KMC similar. It's probably also settling a bit, but not really moving much. Not nearly as much as what's falling in the middle of the caldera. So I'm sure that all those facilities are going to have to check all their infrastructure, right? All their piping and their wiring and all of that. The longer this thing lasts, the more likely there's going to be some damage to at least some part of the facilities over there. So I'm sure that's going to be a while before everything gets back going up there. Okay. So let's see. Someone says there was no sound on the live feed about the pictures. Did you watch that live feed earlier with Ken?
Oh, I have really bad internet at home, and so I can only watch like a minute and a half of most videos, and mine had sound.
Yeah, so we'll see if I haven't actually watched it all the way through it either. But if that really is a problem, then we'll do another one. Yeah, but for now we'll just leave it to what they put out there.
Okay.
So where is Ikaika? Ikaika is on a mission and
somewhere. Yeah,
he told us he would be here, and we'll keep going.
Whatever he's doing, I'm sure it's good.
Yeah, and important.
Important. Yep.
Right. So we don't have updates from him as far as the ocean entry, but we have those aerial photographs that try to substitute for what's going on there. Okay. Is there a possibility of Thurston's lava tube collapsing from these earthquakes? It's possible that there could be some loose blocks that are falling over there. But by and large, you know, that lava tube survived the last collapse of the caldera, right? And lava tubes are kind of natural archways, so they are fairly strong. You know, they do kind of have a lot of cracks in them from a cooling process usually, rather than the earthquakes. You know, when people walk through lava tubes, you see a lot of cracks in there. You might think, oh, it must be earthquakes, but it's probably from the initial cooling effect. There's probably some earthquake cracks also and some loose blocks, you know, and then there's one section of the lava tube where people were prying on a roof and loosening the boulders, loosening those rocks, right? That's why they closed that back section, because some piece fell down. So where people have messed with it, maybe it's possible for sure, but it naturally should be fairly resistant to collapse. Right. Yeah, as most of the lava tubes that are around.
I don't know about Puapo'o though, the wild lava tube, which a lot of people aren't familiar with because it's ranger guided only, limited access. But Puapo'o is in the East Rifts within the national park, and that lava tube is so ornate with glassy formations on the inside. So in this kind of shaking caves like that might lose a lot of the stalactites, the nahukus and stuff hanging from them. Yeah. But Thurston lava tube is a compared to many, very stable, very solid cave, which is one of the reasons it stays open for visitors. So I wouldn't worry. Hopefully it'll still be there.
Yeah. Although it's going to be a long time till the park is open again, you guys. So if you really want to see lava tube, you know, go to some of the other ones. You know, there's one actually in my neighborhood that's fantastic, the Kazamura lava tube.
Yeah.
Right, there's some really nice sections of that. And in fact, I've been wanting to go in there recently because the section up by my neighborhood is a section that has had rapids and there are kind of old boulders in it and kind of snaking features, things that we're maybe seeing in processes happening today in the lava channel. I'd be interested to see them again through these kind of eyes. So, okay. Someone says they see the live people with Kaika and Ken and there was sound. Okay, so yeah, maybe another one of these Facebook. We've heard a lot about issues with sound on a Facebook app, right? So you know, maybe try to restart your app or update your app. Or I updated my app. Maybe that was part of our problem. So keep trying, you guys. How much did the island grow? Well, we have here on actually official USGS map from today that they put out. The island has grown 555 acres.
That's incredible.
And there gives you the total flow area as well, right? 10.2 square miles.
And we were just considering that's 10.2 square miles with an average thickness of probably somewhere like 20 feet deep over 10 square miles. So put that on a map of anywhere and you realize how big these lava flows really are. It's hard to think of this eruption in context compared to other parts of the country, other parts of America. But 10 square miles buried in meters, tens of meters. It's just incredible how much material has come out of this volcano in the past few months. It's amazing.
All right, so there's something else that I was thinking we were going to talk about that I'm forgetting about again right now. But maybe I can jostle my memory here, huh? Let's see what else we got going on. Well, we can check the traffic cams for those interested in 130. Yeah, so by the way, Highway 130 has been reopened for everybody. Kaimu is open for business again down Kalapana side, so you guys can go down there and take your business down there. I'd love to see you guys. In fact, tomorrow is Wednesday, so it should be hopping town down at the Kava Bar. But the market will be going full swing down in Kalapana again, and so I think, you know, we'll probably need to get out a little bit, you know, even though we're a little hesitant about reopening things on the other side of these hot plates. We gotta do it sometime, I think. So I don't know. We're not sure.
Maybe.
Not sure, you know, how that's gonna go exactly, but there you go. Like, so right now the cracks are totally fine, right? We're still looking at the hundreds as far as temperature. Nothing's really changed, so I'm not really concerned about anything about that. Kalapana is safe right now. You know, if something changes as far as where the fissures open up, then it will not be as fine, but there is no sign of that change happening anytime soon. You know, I think for tomorrow it's probably fine.
Yep.
You know, long term, maybe not as much.
Maybe not as much.
But we don't know. We'll have to see how the eruption actually ends.
Just go there knowing you're living on the edge, south of the cracks. Makes it exciting. You never forget that night, right? But there's no reason to be particularly concerned compared to any other of these days. If it changes, we'll look again.
Right, and going at a market and see some live music is different than let's say moving back into your house.
Right.
Right. That's a whole other level of
it's very
commitment
different
and trust of the volcano.
It's different to visit, different to see your friends down there than it is to be living down there. And just statistically, it's a different risk.
Right. Yeah. So the thing that has been maybe the most impactful down there, and not that much of the time, has been the gas. Right.
Yeah.
So if for some reason the gas gets bad, then everyone will know it for sure, and then everyone will leave. That's basically how it'll go down. But probably the gas will be fine. Probably the wind will be blowing a different direction.
Yeah. If the air is good, then you're good. If the air is good, then everybody's good.
Yeah. So, all right, let's see if there's any question. PGV, there's nothing different with PGV that we've heard. The big difference with PGV is the flow from Fissure 22. Here, let's make some space here and show you guys once again. We'll talk about this at the beginning of our broadcast, but I know you guys didn't all join us quite as early. So there's 22, and that little red spot is where the flow has covered new land, right? So there was reports of maybe some fire, maybe some white smoke from there, but the facility, the actual PGV facility, is way over here, actually. So this flow is not that near the facility. It's within the yellow line of the boundary of the larger parcel, right? But it's not really directly affecting the power plant. So around the power plant, nothing has really changed.
And again, that yellow, that red blob, when you look at the thermal image, that represents almost the entire flow from number 22, and you see how small it is on the map. So the flow is coming from the vents and coming right along the edge there, and so it's a very small lava flow, at least at this time.
All right, so then I can show you guys that same image in the thermal. They actually did a thermal. Here's our thermal, right? So there's our thermal image of that same area, right? So there's 22, and there's that flow that was still hot when they shot this thermal image on July 2nd. But the photograph we got today didn't show any red on it, so it doesn't mean it's not still hot, but it may be cooling and not actually as active as it was back then anymore. So, all right. Mauna Loa Southwest Rift has some steam. Yeah, Mauna Loa steams a lot. The whole summit Caldera steams a lot. And then one thing that's really tricky about steam is that the steam varies depending on the humidity in the air, how much it's rained recently. So be really careful about the steam. Yeah, so sometimes you see steam kind of appear when there hasn't been a real change in eruption.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
The look of the steam changes, but I mean the activity hasn't changed, or the condition of the steam vent hasn't changed. It's the atmosphere that's changed. It just looks different.
Right. So someone asked about the undersea topography, and I think I saw that Les helped us out and answered that question earlier, and said, let me scroll back up here.
The topography at the breakout, or
I think at the ocean, right?
Oh, okay.
So Les says that the deepest ocean covered by lava, was 620 feet deep.
Wow. That's really deep.
Yeah.
But it can't get a whole lot further from there, because just slightly further out to sea, the water is a lot deeper. So you see Cape Kumakahi out here. If you can draw an imaginary line, there's some shallow-ish water that came right through Kapoho Bay here, but just slightly further than where the new delta has gotten here. Out here is very, very deep water. So it gets thousands of feet deep, just slightly further out. And so once it builds out a little bit further, and I'm not sure exactly where, we could get out a bathymetry map maybe.
Let's just put up a link here to his bathymetry map, so you guys can actually.
Yeah, and I have some we could unroll for the live updates too, but there a little bit further is the kind of level where we can expect the delta's going to start breaking off building and breaking and building and breaking. But it's been able to build this 555 acres of new land because it's relatively shallow. Even 600 feet deep, it sounds deep, but that's shallow compared to the rest of the Pacific. So it's been able to build a lot of new land really efficiently. It's gonna reach a limit not too much further seaward from where it's at.
This is the old sea cliff.
Yeah,
Old shoreline here, by the way.
The dotted line is showing us the old bay.
That great on the image, but yeah,
there we go.
Better, yeah.
So that's the old water's edge.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention is that if you look at kind of Kalapana today, Kaimu especially, right, the area that has the most lava is where the old bay used to be. So that area where the bay got filled in, that's likely to stay new land. But a lot of the other area that's farther offshore, a lot of that collapsed back in, right? So we're not sure how much of that will collapse once this is all over. It may take, you know, the first hurricane of the season arriving. Unfortunately, it's getting to that time. Yeah, but once we have some big waves over in that part of the island, we may start seeing more collapses just from the erosion, you know, the wave erosion of what's a lot of rubble that's been piling up.
Rubble
right
and
there,
piles of black sand. It's amazing how much black sand is being created out there. So any of the areas that were built up on black sand and pohoihoi on top of them, the waves might undermine that and cause collapses in the long run. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. So it's still got to settle away. Is kind of you know my take on it.
Yeah.
So let's see what else we got. I was gonna maybe look up if we could see on here the data for the last month and try to look at the earthquake counts. Right. Okay. So this was what I was thinking before.
Okay.
Right. Could have been another one of our lines of evidence of something changing at the summit, but turned out not to be the case because of what I described earlier. But so okay, what I've done, if you guys are interested in this kind of similar approaches, gone to the monitoring page in HVO and then gone to the data for the past month. Okay. So if I do that, and then scroll down, these kind of give you some cross sections of where the earthquakes were. It's kind of too many to really tell anything. And then there's kind of a brute force approach right here that kind of shows how many earthquakes happened per day, right? And so here's a scale, 0, 100, 200, you know. So for the past month, we've had, you know, maybe at least 300 and some, you know, at most. I'll look over there, we're over 700. Almost 800 for that one peak over here, right? So if the pattern on tilt meter is actually a meaningful change, then and you know what looks like a drop in a number of earthquakes, we should see that in this data over here. And what we see is there is not really a drop in a number of earthquakes, at least right now. Right now in Hawaii, it's 11:30 at night. You know, it's getting kind of late, but this data, I believe, is in 24-hour bins, right? So like anything that happens in 24 hours gets added up. So if we check it, let's say at 1 in the morning, this number in the very far right might actually be down quite a bit because it's only counting 1 hour of the day. So you gotta be careful about that. Or if that's the case, if it does it the other way, then the number on this end might be too far down also. So you gotta be careful of the ones on the very edge, it turns out, because of the way that this data is kind of grouped together. But if after a few days you see a change, you know, and you know, notice that have been times where there have been a drop, but it was only temporary for one day. So if we see several days of earthquakes going down, then we can say, okay, that's really a significant change. So that's another line of evidence that tells us that the tilt meter data that we saw looking different isn't really a real change in a signal, right? It's just a change in the calibration of the instrument. Is what we're talking about right here, right? Well, those of you who hadn't noticed before, the HVO calibrated their instrument on the evening of the 1st, and that's why the data looks different from then on. There hasn't been a change in eruption. All right, so have we dragged this on long enough?
I'll say yes.
Yeah, well, that should probably do it. My phone just popped up, 10% power, so time to shut it down, guys. So we're sorry that we didn't see Kaika turn up before the end of this.
He needs rest.
But yeah, he needs rest.
Maybe he's resting. That would be good.
Yeah, so we know he's got a lot to take care of here. So we'll maybe keep. At least I will. We'll be losing some of our crew here for a little while. John's going to be traveling in a few days.
Yep. Be going to Alaska on a volcanoes trip. Really looking forward to it. But yeah, Philip will be our man to see what happens next. So we'll
see.
Try and keep in touch with him.
Yeah, and hopefully Kaika will keep feeding us updates. He's got to go to the mainland too for a little while. So yeah, we'll hold it together. Don't worry.
Yep.
So thanks you guys. Thanks for tuning in. By the way, you know, we did try to do the update horizontal yesterday, and it doesn't seem to work on my particular phone. It seems to work on Kaika's phone. So if anyone knows, I have an iPhone X, right? That's my issue, right? So I can't figure out how to get that thing to work horizontal on an iPhone X. If someone knows that, feel free to message me. I'm happy to do it if I can figure it out. But the time I've spent looking it up, I can't figure it out. So
you're doing great, Phil.
If anyone
we love you, Phil.
Anyone who can figure that out, please share with me how to do it. Well, I'll be happy to just switch it to that. So okay, guys. With that, we'll sign off. Yeah. What do you got to say, John?
I wish I could say Maleka's one. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. That sentiment. Take care, everybody. One moment at a time.
Well, channel.
Yep.
Maleka today.
We miss her.
So I'm gonna channel Kaika since he's not here, right? So.
Well, we can say his though.
All right. So here we go.
Stay classy, Puna.
Aloha.
Aloha.